Right, good evening, everybody. So we're joined this evening by our panel, which I'm going to now ask to introduce themselves. I'm Pete from Wet Wheels Yorkshire, and we have with us this evening, also from Wet Wheels Yorkshire, Graham Oliver. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Graham. And
I thought it was going to be ladies first, Peter.
That's why I started with you, Graham.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, my name's Graham Oliver. I'm a volunteer with Wet Wheels, but I'm also very keen, interested in birds and cetaceans. So living on the coast as I do, it's a great place to enjoy, particularly the last few years, seeing a lot more dolphins and whales up and down our coast.
Thank you. And Bex?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bex Lynham. I'm the Marine Advocacy Officer for the North Sea Wildlife Trusts, and I'm based here in Yorkshire with Yorkshire Wildlife Trust. And I'm with you guys today because I'm in the lucky position of coordinating a programme which is aiming to collect as much data as we can on whales and dolphins and porpoises in Yorkshire's waters and further afield. So I'm not an expert on cetaceans, but I'm lucky enough to capture the data that we feed to the expert, and they tell us what it means and what we should do about it. So looking forward to talking to you about it this evening.
And Lauren, one of our
participants. I'm Lauren.
Earlier this year. Yeah.
I'm Lauren. I'm from Leeds. I am a bit of a daredevil up for anything and everything, but especially things that go fast. So I like going on the Wet Wheels boat. And any kind of water sports or sports in general, really. And occasionally I blog about it at theviewfromthewheelchairspace.com.wordpress.com.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Lauren. Good to see you tonight. Purple hair and everything. That's one of your trademarks, isn't it?
Mermaid hair.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whale attracting hair.
And again, I've got to say, we missed out on Tom Cruise again, so we've got Whitby's version. You'd like to introduce yourself, Dale?
I am Dale. I'm from Whitby, and a very happy participant of the Wet Wheels. Absolutely amazing charity, and I'm glad to be here again. Lovely time to spend with you all.
Brilliant. So the idea this evening, guys, for those that joined us earlier in the year when lockdown part 1 was in progress, we talked about the cetacean life, so that's whales and dolphins off the Yorkshire coast, and we've been quite excited because there's been an increase in activity over the last couple of years, I think it's fair to say. So this evening is really a bit of a catch-up on that. We've got some videos that were taken this year off Wet Wheels, which I think are really interesting. And just to add a bit of credibility to the whole affair, we've got Bex, who says she's not an expert, and Graham, who says he's not an expert, but they both have a depth of knowledge. We also are offering people the chance to win tickets for a trip on Wet Wheels in summer 2021. So we've got a couple of vouchers here. So if you'd care to submit a question via Facebook, we'll hopefully read some of those out, and everybody that submits a question, we'll put it in a hat and draw somebody at some point later down the line. So without further ado, I think we'll start things off with Bex. If you'd like to, with Graham's help, just give us a bit of an update on the animals that we're talking about this evening.
Yeah, definitely. So as Pete said, last time I think I was talking to you all, we talked a bit more generally about whales that we get in the North Sea region, but we really want to focus on the stars of the season, certainly this season, for today's talk. And they have been largely the minke whale and the bottlenose dolphins, which we're so lucky to have seen a lot of this summer season in particular. So if we start with the minke whales, so we've got a couple of species of minke whale, and you'll be not be surprised to hear that it's not the Antarctic minke whale that we get around here. We get the common minke whale, and it's one of the smallest whales in the seas, but it's the most common that we get in the North Sea and in UK seas generally. But despite being the smallest whale, or one of the smallest whales, they're still up to 10 meters in size. So I don't know if you're going to show a clip, Pete, but for those of you that have been lucky enough to see one at sea, when we get to see them at sea, what we see is just the whale as it kind of rolls over, as it's about to take a dive, and you see this beautiful kind of sickle-shaped dorsal fin. And you can kind of tell from looking at the whale that, you know, you're looking at a big animal because you know you're only seeing a small proportion of it. But of course, underneath the water, you're looking at something that's up to 10 meters in size. So they're absolutely huge animals, despite being one of the smaller whale species. So they are fantastic.
Let me show you this very short one, Bex, which is a trip you were involved in. It's a really good example, though.
Yeah, look at that. And what wonderful conditions for whale watching. You really couldn't ask for better conditions for surveying the whales and dolphins. There we are. I've put my clipboard down. We're all excited. We've seen what we wanted to see, and we're too busy filming, and we were really lucky to see these guys. And I love this clip as well because you can see just how close to the shore these guys are. So we're not talking about having to travel miles and miles off the coast, which sometimes they are. But a lot of them this season were coming very close inshore. So I can't remember where was in the background on that occasion, Pete. Was it Staithes?
Yeah, Kettleness, and in the very far right there, you can just see Runswick Bay.
Oh yes, of course. So as you can see, we're really close to the coast, so you can actually see minke whales from the coastline. You know, if you've got the time and the patience, you can take your binoculars out on a really good weather day like this, so no wind and really, really flat seas, and you can see these animals from the shore, which is just, I think, absolutely mind-blowing to think that we've got these ocean giants in our waters. So yeah, that was an absolutely fantastic day, but you are really seeing a really tiny proportion of that animal when we see them. And the funny thing about minke whales compared to the other species that I'm going to talk about, which is the bottlenose dolphins, is that in less than perfect conditions, i.e. these conditions, they can be quite hard to spot because as a species, minke whales are quite, they're not acrobatic, not like the bottlenose dolphins. They're not as playful. So you tend to see that back roll and that dorsal fin if it's nice flat conditions like this, but otherwise spotting them can be relatively tricky because they don't tend to jump in out of the water or move their tails around. When they roll over, that tail, what we call the fluke, doesn't necessarily come out of the water. Now minke whales are known to breach, so when we say breach, what we mean is they jump clean out of the water. They can do that, but we know that in this area they just don't tend to do that, so they don't give themselves away very easily. So they're a big animal, and we have good luck in spotting them, but they can be more challenging to spot than some of the other animals that we're lucky enough to see.
I think it's fair to say as well, Bex, with the North Sea, like you said, with the conditions you had there, even though that is a big animal, that dorsal fin is very small, and it doesn't take much in terms of a bit of a dark day with a bit of a sea, so that even if they were coming out, you wouldn't have much chance of seeing them. And sometimes the best place is from the cliffs because you can actually look down on them. And probably this year, I think I've seen more reported sightings from the shore. There may be more people out there, so you don't know, but it's been very on topic this year. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to point out, Graham, that you're entirely wrong in that. The best place to see them from is Wet Wheels, Yorkshire.
For those of you not lucky enough to be able to go on Wet Wheels, Yorkshire on a regular basis.
So I better point that out.
When we're out with Wet Wheels Yorkshire, it is a wonderful platform in which to watch whales from. particularly in those conditions, is very useful to have those flat, calm conditions, which we're not always blessed with in the with the North Sea, are we, Pete? So we're very grateful for those kind of conditions. It was wonderful.
We did have a period though in the middle of summer, just before, was it Storm Francis blew in, that we basically, for about 10 days, consecutive days, we saw the whales every single day, every trip. So that was, and the conditions were mixed. I think we'll see a video shortly of Lauren's trip, and whilst the conditions were decent, they were far from perfect. But yeah, so they, if you're close enough, or if you're in the vicinity, they're pretty good to spot.
Definitely. And we're just so lucky that these animals really come in close to feed like they do, and that we can spot them. And I think it's great, because of course we all want a trip on the Wet Wheels vessel, but as Graham says, if you're not lucky enough to do it, isn't it fantastic that you can try and see them from the shore? But there is a season for minke whales generally, so we kind of, generally speaking, we see them between about June and October, don't we? And it is possible outside of that, but generally not, because the reason that they're here is because they're feeding, and we see them feeding. And they come close inshore because they're following their prey. It's that simple. All animals are really concerned with three things, which is breeding, feeding, and looking after their babies. So and that's the main thing that they're doing here. Is they tend to eat things like herring and mackerel and krill. So when they come to Yorkshire, they're coming for, we think, following the herring shoals, and the herring gets pushed really close inshore, and it definitely did this year, from the data that we've looked at. And so that brings the minke whales to us. We're we're very blessed to be able to see them so close up. So it's great.
And of course, not only the minkies, we have our friends, our new friends, I think it's fair to say, or certainly new regular visitors, the bottlenose dolphin. So
yeah, so with the minkies, we're talking about them a lot more, aren't we? As if they're a new thing. But actually, we know that the minkies have been coming to the Yorkshire coast to feed for at least a decade, and it's probably longer than that. It's just that, well, it's a combination of things, I think, really. I think there's more people out spotting them, especially this summer, because we're all holidaying here, aren't we? So there's more people out and about, and we had some really good, especially in the spring, some really good weather days this summer, so it lends itself to seeing them more. So yeah, that does affect what we see, and how often. But yeah, it's been a fantastic year for the bottlenose dolphins as well. So unlike the minke whales, we think, kind of looking at the data tentatively that we've got for the last few years, the bottlenose dolphins are relatively recent newcomers to the area. The kind of them being in this area has really increased in recent years, and definitely this year and last year we've seen them really consistently. It's been absolutely fantastic, because they are staying, it seems, or at least not necessarily staying, but they are making regular appearances in our coastal waters. So another animal that you can see from coast, but obviously it's better seen on a Wet Wheels vessel. And the dolphins that we're seeing, I don't know if it always translates in the video, Pete, because the videos are wonderful, but again, thinking about this, and that one's quite close, so you do get a better sense of how big they are. But you find bottlenose dolphins all over the world, except in the poles. But we've got the biggest bottlenose dolphins of all residing in this country. So some of these dolphins are up to 4 meters in size. They're absolutely huge. And just to give that a bit more perspective, in terms of their weight, they're 10 times, the biggest adults, the biggest males are 10 times my weight on a good day. So they're pretty big. They're pretty big animals, and really, really special. And the cool thing about bottlenose dolphins and lots of cetacean species is that we can start to identify different individuals. Look how close they are. they're very inquisitive species. That's the thing to say about bottlenose dolphins, is really, really sophisticated intellects and very, very social with it. So you will find that they'll come in interact with boats, won't they? I think you've had many encounters, haven't you, Pete, where they've kind of...
I think it's fair to say that, for example, in this situation here, the engines are off, the boat is stationary, and several of them come to us and approach us. They're as inquisitive as we are of them. So this was a particularly nice trip with her family.
Yeah, this is fantastic. They're really close, and Pete makes a good point there about them, how close they're getting. And I think a really important thing to mention is that that's in part in the way that Pete is interacting with them, i.e. giving the animals the choice to interact with us. So that's something that we're really passionate about. It's really important for us to collect this data, but we need to make sure that when we're doing that, we're really sensitive to the needs of the animals. So, we stop the boat and we watch when it turns the engine off. Dolphins and other animals communicate by they need to make sounds to communicate, and the sea is a very noisy place these days, so if we can lessen the noise, that makes communicating with each other and doing other kind of vital tasks much easier for them. So yeah, letting them choose how they interact with us really, really helps and ensures that we don't disturb them when they're out there, because we're in their habitat, aren't we? We're in their environment.
Absolutely. I don't know if you remember this one, Bex. This is when we'd taken the BBC out and we'd seen the whales and we're heading back. We were blessed with a big pod of dolphins, so we don't get it every day. I must say we had our Wet Wheels Yorkshire feedback forms came back last week, and somebody marked us 4 out of 5 because we didn't manage to show them whales. So I was a little bit disappointed.
Oh yeah, better luck next time. So
Yeah,
everyone does want to see whales, and I can appreciate that. This was a fantastic evening, and to be honest, I think I needed dragging in. I would have happily stayed out longer. We only came in because it was getting dark, so I think really it was a kind of magical day for seeing the whales and the dolphins, and they were just kind of sailing past as we came back into the harbour, so we stopped to watch them. So a really intelligent species, as I was saying, and very curious, which really goes in our favour because they tend to come and sometimes they choose to come and investigate us, which is wonderful. And I was just saying a little bit about kind of how we know which animal is which. So one of the things that we can do as researchers is take photographs of the individual bottlenose dolphins, because most dolphins have a dorsal fin, so the fin on its back, that is like our fingerprints, i.e. it's unique because it has a series of nicks and notches on it that makes that dorsal fin unique. So we use photo ID to tell who's who. Which is pretty tough because we can't always get a good photograph of them. But in doing that, in taking the photographs of the animals, what we're learning is that the dolphins that are spending time in Yorkshire's waters are coming to visit us from Scotland, which is really exciting to know, to learn more about how they're using our waters and other areas of the sea. And it shows you just how far they travel as well. So some of the individuals that are using this area have been using the Moray Firth up in Scotland, still on the east coast, but right up into Scotland for a very long time. That population, I think, is between 150 and 200 individuals, and so we know that they're definitely starting to use Yorkshire's waters more, and we know that because of this photo ID technique. So that's a really useful research tool that we've been using recently.
Coming back to distance, Bex, I think I'm right in saying that one of the Moray Firth bottlenose dolphins was sighted off the west coast of Ireland and then returned. So that's a heck of a journey.
Yeah, that's incredible, isn't it? So, I mean, they're big, very robust animals, so I've no doubt they're capable of, even further migrations, but it just shows you the kind of sea area that they're using, and the amount of space that they need, and that they might use different areas for doing different things. So, and a lot of these, to be honest, we've got more questions than we have answers, because it just, you just want to know more about where they're going and what they're doing and how they're using different areas. So we look forward to understanding that. And that's exactly why we're doing the work with Wet Wheels, so we can work together to get a bit more data and learn a bit more about these animals.
I've just had a question come in from Nona Lawton, which I think Dale knows very well, from Whitby. And she's asking, are they coming from Scotland for feeding, or is there another reason?
Yeah, that is a really good question, and the honest answer, and unfortunately the answer to a lot of questions, is we don't know. But yes, I mean, they are feeding when they're here. They've definitely been photographed feeding. Obviously, they need to feed regularly. So once they make that kind of movement down there, of course, they do have to feed. Whether they are coming specifically to feed, whether there's problems with enough food up in that area is something that we're definitely trying to work out, and that's why the photo ID work is really useful, because it'll tell us how much time different dolphins are spending in this area. Are they kind of spending the winter in the Moray Firth in Scotland and then coming down here in the summer, or are they going back up and down quite regularly? So the honest answer is we don't know, but they're definitely feeding.
That ties into another one that's just arrived, which is from Helen, one of our participants who brings a lovely son, Adam, on board, and unfortunately is desperate to see dolphins and whales, but we've managed to miss them every time. And the question is, do they stay around through the winter? And I think we've got some really quite up-to-date information on that just over the last couple of days, haven't we?
Yeah, so definitely with the minke whales, we know that they tend to be around, as I mentioned before, around kind of June and October generally. We don't think that we don't have sightings data in the main for outside of that period, maybe a few for May, June, but otherwise. With the bottlenose dolphins, however, we are getting sightings of them coming through. I've had some messages about sightings of the bottlenose dolphins today and yesterday. So they're definitely still hanging around. With what level of frequency, that we're still trying to work that out, because there were points during the summer where they were seen kind of consecutively for kind of a week or longer. Whether that will be the case during the winter, who knows? But it would be.
Sorry, Bex.
No.
As I say, certainly from some of the Facebook groups you can get involved in, the regularity of bottlenose dolphins a little bit further up the coast, below Scotland, seems to be increasing all the time again. And there does seem to be a number that are hanging around more often. Again, the data is inconsistent, but there's quite a lot of work being done by a number of groups in terms of the photo ID, and particularly this winter. I know there's a few people who are very keen up there to see how often they are hanging around. So, as you say, it's a beautifully confused picture. They do seem to be spreading their tours around, and there probably is a growth in population that they potentially, like other species, start casting around for where else they could live if the species numbers grow.
I think another thing to just step in there, Graham, we see them all along the coast. Our reach as Wet Wheels Yorkshire this season has gone from Saltburn down to Filey and beyond. And we've seen them at every point in between, usually quite close to the shore.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put a video up here. This was at Haben Wyke, so between Scarborough and Robin Hood's Bay, which, Graham, you were on this trip, yeah. So if you'd like to comment on this one.
Well, we were travelling.
Scarborough Disability Action Group.
Yeah, and it's Scarborough in the distance, Scarborough Castle. And we spotted them as we were trawling up, and then we managed to go out to sea and go ahead of them. And as before, turn the engines off so that they would come towards us. And this is just outside a place called Hayburn Wyke. And we think there was about 6, as I recall, Peter. But they were just gently swimming along, probably doing a bit of feeding, but completely unperturbed.
They have like a whistle.
I can hear you talking there about the way they communicate with each other.
Yes, it's funny listening to myself saying that. Yeah, but obviously, as Beck said already, they communicate by sound, a little bit similar to how bats do it with sort of echolocation. They have a range of whistles, and they even identify themselves with their own whistle. So that there is enough research now to suggest they all have a unique name, if you like, so they can communicate and they know who's communicating. And then they will also echolocate.
We lost
food
you
as
there,
well.
Graham.
Sorry?
I say we lost you there for a second, Graham. Did you say do they have Yorkshire accents now, or are they still Scottish accents?
I'm not sure how echolocation translates in Yorkshire. Debagum.
Maybe Scottish with a developing Yorkshire twang.
That's a better idea, Bex.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess.
Pick some geography up on the way down.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons that we might be seeing them close inshore as well is obviously related to that food source. So I mean, it's difficult enough to get a picture of the dolphins anyway without trying to ID what they're eating when they are eating, but people have been able to do that, and they are captured eating salmon. You know, that's kind of obviously associated with our estuaries, so that's one reason to stay close inshore, which is great. And it's quite funny to watch them feed as well, because dolphins eat their prey whole. So what they'll do is they'll catch it, and then they'll chuck it up in the air. And obviously it's easier to if it can just go straight down. So they'll kind of toss it up into the air and then open their mouths wide, and in it goes. So watching them feed is a real pleasure, because yeah, again, it's more acrobatics even in eating. It's funny to watch.
Well, on that subject, I'm gonna go off piste a bit and show a little video that isn't one of ours, and it wasn't filmed in Yorkshire, but I think on the subject of feeding, it's a really, really good one to illustrate. So if you bear with me a moment, this is a minke whale feeding. And if you want to talk us through this one, Bex.
Yeah, I love this video. It's just absolutely fabulous. So it's not Yorkshire, but it is the UK. Just what perfect conditions. So what you can see is a minke whale feeding, surrounded by dolphins as well. And you can just see, there you go, that's a better shot, the bait bowl there. So that really tight group of fish that currently the dolphins are feeding on, they're kind of corralling it into that bowl, and picking off individuals, and they work very much together to do that. And then at the same time as that, you're seeing that minke whale kind of swim almost underneath or to the side and open that huge mouth of it, with those baleen plates that it has inside its mouth, which kind of sieve out its food. So it opens its mouth really, really wide, and then just kind of gobbles up that fish, and the excess water kind of comes back out of through those baleen plates. And then it swallows. But yeah, what amazing footage. So I'm sure it won't be long before Pete's got similar footage of this kind off the Yorkshire Wet Wheels vessel. Isn't that right, Pete?
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's some good drone footage of the bait balls.
But yeah, so that wasn't taken in Yorkshire, but we felt it was such a good video that we thought we'd share that one. So I've actually just had a message. Never mind the whales and dolphins. What about them beautiful seals? We did have a conversation about the seals. They're not particularly the subject of today's talk, but I will show a little video towards the end that's quite amusing. Mr. Sleepy Seal. But if we may now, I'd like to hand over to Dale and show the video that we took of Dale with your mum on the boat. Now, you had a few trips with us this year, but this one was pretty special, wasn't it? We weren't fishing on this particular occasion. We were just out because I think the weather was so wonderful that we just had to get out on the water, didn't we? So,
Yeah.
So I'm going to just share this one. If you'd like to talk us through it, Dale, that'd be lovely.
Yeah, I will do. Oh, wow. Look at that. You can hear them. This was one of the more significant trips I've been on. As you can see with the video footage, the water was absolutely clear as a bell. I mean, the water was just so calm. The sun was just absolutely beaming. I mean, there was a little bit of a mist, but it was just one of the best days for watching whales. I mean, at first, when we were coming out of the harbour, we saw a few pods of porpoises and a few lots of seals. But it was, as we got, I can't remember how far we got, but
we went up to Saltburn, didn't we?
Yeah, I think it was just after we came back from Saltburn area, where we'd gone to a point where we'd gone fishing a few days before. It was where we saw the whales then, and from there you could see, I think the most we saw together was 2 at a time.
Yeah, I think that shot there showed them, and we could hear them as well. That was because it was so still, wasn't it?
Yeah, the water being so calm, there was no echoes from the water slapping against the boat, or no significant swell causing irritation to the water, and subsequently being able to see every time they breached the water, and the clarity of the breach was amazing. I mean, you saw pretty much every single time, and as Pete said, you could hear them so clearly. And at one point we had about 3 groups, or it sounded like 3 groups at some point, because I mean, we had one group that was around a pots, then there was another 1 or possibly 2 that were off the stern of the boat, in between our boat and the secondary boat further out, and then we could hear at least one other, either one other or 2 other whales to the side of us, and you could see every time that they were coming up and then disappearing, and we saw maybe 6 lots, 7 lots over the course of the afternoon.
Yeah, it was in that period where they were very active. The conditions were great, and we pretty much saw them every trip. And it's sad that we can't make that happen for everybody, but that's you've got to be in it to win it. You've got to be out there and experiencing that. And I think this year the thing that's been remarkable is putting that experience, which on its own is a remarkable experience, but to have it in the context of lockdown and shielding and all the not so pleasant stuff this year. We had some very emotional trips. It was great to get out on the water and share that experience with people.
Yeah, I have to say, coming from my situation, similar to a lot of people, for those that are able to get out on wet wheels and they may not have had such a lucky break as we did, finding number of pods of whales and having such good conditions, but it's just the fact that even trying to find whales, trying to spot dolphins, You may see porpoises, you may see seals, but it's just the aspect of being able to get out on the boat and just be able to enjoy freedom for an hour, 30 minutes. It's away from normality. It's a different setting altogether. It's a different feeling, and it just makes life feel much better at that point.
Oh, that's great. It does, and that's the case for everybody. Both the people that we're taking out and the crew. We all appreciate that. We certainly have this year. So, Lauren, are you jealous? Because I think the trip you were on, these were probably not as greater conditions, but we did get some great sightings, didn't we? So
Yeah,
if you
mean,
talk us through this one.
You'll know from a comparative perspective of different trips in terms of what you have seen, which trips have been the most numerous. But I thought it was brilliant. The water was so calm. I feel like I could have taken my mum on the water and she gets seasick.
Right there, he's going to come up. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it's just breathtaking.
How the water's going weird.
And
whale, there he goes.
Absolutely breathtaking. Just watching the water, and you know, as Beck said, like they didn't. You know, minke whales don't breach and play so much as bottlenose dolphins do, but that really isn't relevant to how much enjoyment I got and anybody can get from seeing them, because just every single time we saw one, it was just absolutely breathtaking. And to see two, and to you know, hypothesize about the relationship between them, and the actual the calmness of this, and the sense of the whole experience. And this was the same with the trip I took after as well, where we did see some seals. Just even to have the wind like whipping through your hair, and it was absolutely captivating and brilliant. And I haven't seen dolphins yet, but to me, that's just yet another reason to take another trip.
Absolutely.
Because every trip is different, and every trip is special in a different way. So I can't recommend, you know, and thank you enough for making this opportunity available for people. It's absolutely
there's a
brilliant.
whole team that make that happen, and some lovely people that support what we do. And the purpose of this evening isn't a shout out asking for money, but it's always, you know, if somebody's got a something tucked in the bottom drawer. But no, it's a joy to share. Everybody on the Wet Wheels team knows it's a privilege to do it, and to enable people to get on the water. We've made some great friends, and seen some amazing wildlife. I just as by way of a quick update, when I'm looking away, I'm not watching the football. I'm just reading some of the messages coming in and the questions. But one lovely lady called Kay from Scarborough, she regularly keeps us updated. In fact, she pointed us in the direction of some dolphins earlier in the year, and she was out fishing with her friend today, and the dolphins were around Scarborough today. So that's hot off the press, that one from the.
Oh, it's lucky for them.
Yeah.
So
in terms of that, in Scarborough, North Marine Drive there is actually a great spot to, if you don't see the dolphins, you will quite possibly see the porpoise. Obviously, we're not encouraging people to go and stand in crowds on Marine Drive at the moment, but
or anywhere. But
Wow.
yeah, you're right, Pete. It's a really good spot for spotting the harbour porpoise. So we get little harbour porpoise in the North Sea and in Yorkshire waters, and they're the only porpoise species that we get, and they're much smaller than the dolphins. And I have to say that we do notice that when the dolphins are around playing, the harbour porpoise are not, because between you and I, they're not very nice to them sometimes. So we think that and this is all anecdotal at this point, but we think that when the dolphins do spend less time in this area, so towards the winter, as we say, we are starting to see that they're spending more time around here, even in the winter months. But we think it's less time, but that is a good time to see the harbour porpoise, because if you do stand on Marine Drive, socially distanced, and you can be patient, then you do stand a good chance of spotting the harbour porpoise. They're pretty quick. They've got a really high metabolism, so they're just feeding all the time. They're always in a feeding frenzy because they need to eat a lot to keep going. But you do stand a good chance of seeing them, so it's a good spot to go and look.
I think it's fair to say as well that one of the one of the things we like so much about bottlenose dolphin is we've seen them this year almost in different modes. They're traveling, and they can just travel, and they've got a single purpose, and they don't deviate. And then there's the feeding times when you see them throwing the fish up in the air, but they definitely have playtime. They definitely have a playtime, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Really, and that community that the bottlenose dolphins are in, and I'm sure you'd agree that you see them on their own. That's not a common thing. They're usually in a group. You do get bottlenose dolphins on their own, but they, for the most part, are part of a bigger community. And community is so important if you're a bottlenose dolphin. It's your support system. So if you've got a baby, other dolphins look after your baby. They provide that babysitting service. If you're sick, they look after you. They tell you, other group members tell you about other places to go and get a good snack. It's a community. So that social living, that social side of their lives is really, really important to them. And that kind of, I think through that cooperation, that's how perhaps one factor in why they can spend more time messing around, or at least that's how it looks to our eyes, that they can enjoy themselves because they have a bit of time to do that, and it is an important function within that group. So you'll see them jumping out of the water, they'll bow ride, won't they, next to the boat, they'll follow the boat, and they'll kind of what we think of as playing around, which is just which is great for us because it's so wonderful to watch.
So, Lauren, Dale, have you guys got any questions for Bex? The more controversial, the more difficult, the better.
Yeah, I do actually have one. Just going back to you saying how the porpoises are less likely to be around when the dolphins are around. Is there any way you could possibly set up a play date between them? Because I've kind of got I think Pete will join me in on this. We've got a bit of a sort of like a bingo going for it, like a wet wheels bingo. Because that day we went out, we saw porpoises, we saw the seals, then we saw whales. The last thing we needed to see was dolphins. So we were hoping to see all four in one trip one day, but that sounded like a less likely situation. So what is it that causes porpoises to sort of like flee, I guess?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'll try and have a word, Dale, but I can't promise anything. Because I agree, wouldn't it be great to see all of them in the same day? And it's anecdotal in this area. We've not had the time to sit and observe this kind of in a sort of standardized way, so to speak, in a scientific way. But it is the kind of informal observations that we've made, which is that when the dolphins are around, you just don't see the harbour porpoise with such regularity. And part of the reason for that is because the the dolphins, I hate to say it, because I know we love them, but they do tend to bully. They can bully the harbour porpoise a bit. That they're not nice to them. Is a mild way of saying it. So they stay clear. They keep out of the way.
Would that kind of like purely be based on sort of like the fact that they're a larger species, they've got more strength than the porpoise, so the porpoise find the food, the dolphins could just quite easily snatch it from them?
Yeah, absolutely. Competition for using the same kind of space. I mean, the dolphins are massive, as I said, anywhere between 3 and 4 meters. So they kind of, I suppose, rule the space. They're very fast. So they definitely kind of take over the space, so to speak. And I guess to a certain extent, they provide they're a form of competition to the harbour porpoise. But they've even known to predate on them in the past. So.
Oh.
They do. From what we've seen, they're just not seen at the same time very, very often.
It's the good thing about the coastline here, though, Dale, is I'm sure you'll have seen it as you go up and down the coast. It's quite varied. So
Yeah.
closer in and in certain areas, it can be much more protected and easier for a smaller species to stay. And in fact, if you think about seals, a lot of the pictures you'll see of seals on TV are them swimming in between seaweed and rocks and things like that. And they'll take crabs and other things like that. So, but they're a big enough animal not to be bothered really by a dolphin. Whereas Bex rightly says, the size difference, I mean, 1.8 meters would be a biggish harbour porpoise. They're not just but when they come in close to shore, again, they can choose a different food, probably smaller fish, even though they'd like to have the big fish. If they can't, then they can still survive in there. So I've not seen anything in terms of interference up and down the coast, but again, at the times I've been out on wet wheels, when we have seen porpoise, we've almost seen the porpoise as we're leaving the harbour, and then particularly around Whitby Rocks. And then as you go out a bit further, that's when you look enough to see the bigger species.
Yeah, if I recall, that's what happened similar to us. It was just as we were leaving from Pier Mouth. Was it just behind the buoy that we saw them? I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, you can generalise, and there are areas. In fact, we've worked with Bex and the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust because we're very aware that we're a fast power boat. So we've put in a plan going forward now that we go slower in areas that we know that the whales and dolphins tend to be seen a lot. And up along our stretch of the coast, that is generally quite close in, but we can see them 10, 15 miles offshore as well. So it's a big ocean, and but it's fair to say that a lot of the food can be close inshore at certain times. That can change. But, have you got any questions, Lauren?
Yeah, yeah, Bex. You talked about sometimes the dolphins prey on the porpoises a bit and bully them. What predators do the dolphins face in the UK?
That's a really good question, Lauren. So I wouldn't say, sorry, I probably used the word predate in the wrong way. We're not actually clear whether dolphins are actually predating on the harbour porpoise. I think it's fair to say that they've been known to kill them, but that's not necessarily to eat them. So sorry, I used the wrong word there. It's probably more about a bit of overlap in diet. But in terms of, so getting back to your question, in terms of what eats bottlenose dolphins, the answer is very little. So it might be the case, I mean, because they're a very fast species for a start, so they can get away from other large predators. It's possible that kind of juveniles and babies may be predated on something like orcas. If there was anything that was going to predate on them, it would be orcas, and in other areas of the world, possibly things like great white sharks might catch bottlenose dolphins. But in this area, nothing. We are the biggest threat to them, unfortunately. So not much.
Did you say that orcas tend to be seen off Scotland?
Yeah, we do get orcas off Scotland, really regularly sighted up in the Shetland Islands, definitely, and then on mainland Scotland as well. A very rare occurrence on the northeast of England, and I don't know when the last record of them off Yorkshire was. Very, very, very rare. There have been a few confirmed sightings off northeast, kind of Northumberland way, but rare. And if they're coming this way, it's probably seals, food. Which is always one of the motivating factors for why animals might move, one way or the other. But yeah, very, very rare here. So.
Well, on the subject of seals, we've got to we've got to share this little video. This is. We've pretty much seen everything now. This is one you took, Bex, and this was as we approached Ravenscow, wasn't it? The seal colony.
I just feel so guilty.
It is quite amusing. So this is Mr. Sleepy Seal. So do you want to talk us through it, Bex?
No, I feel so guilty. So I love this video. It's so cute, but we did ultimately disturb him very much by accident. Of course, we did not mean to disturb Mr. Sleepy Seal. But this seal is bottling. He's essentially bobbing on the surface and having a little sleep, and he's able to breathe because they are mammals. They do need to breathe air. So he's got his nose above the water and he's breathing, but he's kind of having a nap, and he did not realize that we were there. So all of a sudden he kind of is clearly slightly aware of us and wakes up and is rather startled. Seals are really inquisitive and they do come to the boat, but it seems that they've got a bit of a, what's the right word? They'll only come so close, and that was definitely too close, and we took him by surprise. Bless him.
Just to defend ourselves on that one, Bex, we had cut quite a while earlier, and we were just drifting with the current, and this guy was oblivious. So I think it's safe to say that if there had been a great white about.
You can't say that.
If there'd been a great white about, he might have tried to jump on the boat. Somewhere to go. But yeah, Pete's absolutely right. We disturbed him because we were so quiet that he didn't know we were there. There's disturbance and there's disturbance. So but lots of seals in our water. So we're really lucky. That was a grey seal, and we get lots of them around there. So
no seals were hurt making that video.
No seals were hurt.
Now, I don't know whether I want to end on this negativity, but we have had a valid question, and it is around the minkies that there's been a number that have been washed up this year. Do you want to expand on that, Bex?
Yeah, so sadly it has been the case that we've had a number of minke whales die on the Yorkshire coastline recently, and it's still not clear exactly why those whales died. It is a relatively rare occurrence to get 3 minke whales that have all died and are floating in very close proximity in the same time period, and that's the situation we faced. I think it was late August or September. So that is really rare and suggests that some human impact had occurred. There's been reports of what looked like boat strike to one, and there was reports of entanglement with another, and it was very clear that a rope was entangled around one of the whales. Whether that entanglement had occurred after the whale had died, we don't know. As far as I know, autopsy wasn't done on the whale, so we can't kind of draw any firm conclusions about exactly why the whales died, albeit I do have to say I think it's very likely that it was due to something to do with us. We did get a whale that washed up at Spurn Point several weeks later, and that was almost conclusively due to entanglement in debris. So yeah, really, really sad, obviously, to see such, fantastic creatures meet that end, unfortunately. But I think, if anything, it just shows us that we've got a lot more to learn about these animals, and we need to do everything that we can to protect them. And that's why it's great working with Wet Wheels, because collecting this kind of information is one step in the right direction of helping to protect them.
Yeah, it's been very popular. Lots of people have put out theories, but I think the lesson is that we need more data, more information before we can act, because this is a global problem, isn't it? Man's interaction with whales and other similar species.
Yeah, unfortunately, things like ship strike and entanglement are a really big issue for whales, alongside lots of other things. There's a lot of threats to lots of marine life, unfortunately. So, yeah, it's really sad to see, and unlikely to be natural causes. But we will keep doing what we're doing, reporting what we're seeing at sea. And as Pete said, the more data that we get, the better, and that gives us something to go on, and therefore we're able to take action. So,
and arguably, given the populations of dolphin and minke whales we get on the coast, it's surprising we actually don't see more dead bodies, in a way, because there will be a natural life cycle. They will have illnesses like we do, but presumably that they're just floating to the bottom out at sea and then getting picked apart by other creatures. And there are certain species of whales that we've only ever seen when we found their bodies. So, it is a big ocean. There's so much we don't know, but as Beck says, there's so much we should be doing to try and restrict our impact on them.
I think some of the world leaders in this, though, which I find encouraging, is the Californian coast, the west coast of the USA. They sort of lead the way in many ways. But 30 years ago, they didn't have any whale strikes because they didn't have any whales, and the population of whales there has recovered fantastically because of a lot of measures, or partly because of some of the measures that they've put in place. So by definition, they then do get some interaction, negative interaction with man. So being a glass is half full sort of person, I like to think that the reason we've had these sad occurrences this year is that there is a growing healthy population, and it makes it more likely, but that is pure speculation.
That's exactly what we were talking about the other days. Can this be can this contribution of unfortunate deaths be contributed to an expanded growth in the population of the whales and the significant traveling that they're doing to come down to our coast? Or is this possibly a larger implication that the fishing industry is getting, or just our interactions in general are getting too close for comfort with the animals?
Well, again, we're back to the science and getting the data. So look, guys, it's 8 o'clock now. We have been on an hour. I'd like to thank everybody that's taken the time on this Thursday evening to join us and support what we do. It's been really good. I'd like to thank Bex and Graham and Lauren and Dale for sparing their time to come and join us and share their experiences of what has been a pretty grim year in some respects, but there has been a lot of joy, certainly on one little corner of the Yorkshire coast. So we will draw the winner of our little competition, who will get to go on the boat next year. And we're just going to close out with a little video we showed right at the beginning. Starts with a couple of whale noises. I should point out, should I not, Graham, that they are not minke whales.
Yeah.
Then we've got a couple of dolphins, and just a little video to end the evening. So thank you to everybody that joined us, and we'll say goodbye to our little
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
you,
very much.
everybody.
It's lovely to
Great to
have
see
you
you.
here.
Three, two, one.